The Ekiti State off-cycle governorship election will take place tomorrow, Saturday, 20th June 2026. The European Union support to democratic governance in Nigeria, EU-Sdgn, two election observation hub comprising the Kuka Center, South Africa, the Nigerian Women Trust Fund, Yaga Africa, the International Press Center, and the Center for Media and Society has deployed election observers across the state ahead of the election. This pre-election statement, which is a follow-up to the pre-election assessment report issued on 25th May 2026, presents the EU-Sdgn Election Observation Hub's final assessment of the pre-election environment. The assessment is based on direct field observations, engagement with stakeholders, and a review of available information in the public domain. The Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) has accredited 98 election observer groups comprising 96 domestic and 2 international organizations and 91 media organizations that are expected to deploy approximately 675 journalists for the election. As part of the accredited observer and media groups, the EU-Sdgn Election Observation Hub affirms its commitment to the independence, impartiality, and non-partisanship that are the foundation of credible election observation, with a clear mandate to observe, document, and report on the electoral process without fear or favor, and in strict adherence to the Declaration of Principles for International Election Observation and the Code of Conduct for International Election Observers, and in compliance with the INEC Code of Conduct for Observers. The Ekiti State governorship election is of considerable national significance. As the first major governorship election to be conducted under the newly enacted Electoral Act 2026, INEC Regulations and Guidelines for the Conduct of Elections 2026, and INEC Manual for Election Officials 2026, it will serve as a critical performance test to assess some of the new provisions in the electoral legal framework aimed at strengthening the integrity and transparency of the electoral process. The election will be contested by 13 political parties and their candidates across 2,445 polling units in the 16 local government areas of the state, with 1,059,360 registered voters and 1,028,929 collected PVCs. Reports from our observers indicated that the political party leaders and candidates are largely living up to the provisions of the peace accord that they signed on 21st May 2026 under the auspices of the National Peace Committee. Most political actors have conducted their campaigns in an orderly manner, demonstrated respect for the rule of law, and generally exercised some restraint over their supporters, with only isolated cases of misconduct. However, the political landscape has undergone significant realignment, and this evolving configuration has heightened electoral competition and increased political tensions in the state. We expect political party agents to be present at polling units, ward collation centers, and other designated electoral locations in accordance with the provisions of the Electoral Act and relevant INEC guidelines. As critical stakeholders in the electoral process, the party agents should conduct themselves in a peaceful, responsible, and lawful manner, respecting the authority of election officials and security personnel. We call on political parties and candidates to condemn all acts of vote trading and vote buying in all its forms, shun the use of thuggery, refrain from spreading fake news, misinformation, and disinformation that is capable of inciting violence, and allow citizens to exercise their franchise without hindrance, coercion, or fear of reprisal.
Its operational, technological, and logistical readiness for the elections, with the completion of 8 out of 9 scheduled pre-election activities, remaining only the conduct of the election. INEC has also deployed some national commissioners and recs to Ekiti to support the election and confirm the distribution of non-sensitive and sensitive election materials, the configuration of the BVAS machines, the recruitment, training, and deployment of election duty officials, arrangements with transport providers for the seamless deployment of personnel and materials to the various election sites, and readiness to implement its accessibility measures, including priority voting for vulnerable persons and provisions of assistive voting devices. Furthermore, INEC conducted a mock accreditation exercise to test the functionality of the bimodal voter accreditation system, BVAS. However, the mock accreditation did not include testing transmission to the INEC results viewing portal, IREF, which is crucial for ensuring the credibility and transparency of the elections. Despite these efforts, we noted a disappointingly low turnout for the mock accreditation exercise. This low participation raises concerns about public awareness and engagement with the electoral process, as effective voter accreditation is essential to prevent fraud and ensure that the election results reflect the true will of the electorate. While these efforts are commendable, the Commission must maintain its neutrality and vigilance by ensuring strict adherence to the electoral legal framework, timely and flawless deployment of personnel and materials, transparent and accurate collation and announcement of results, and prompt electronic transmission and uploading of the validated polling unit results. Election security. The Eu-Sdgn Election Observation Hub notes that the overall atmosphere in the state in the run-up to the election is generally peaceful and calm, in contrast to earlier governorship elections that were fiercely contested. Nevertheless, there are specific security challenges, including the vulnerability of Ekiti to urban electoral violence and the exposure of Ikole, Moba, and Ilejemeje local government areas to cross-border criminal activities, especially kidnapping. Security and law enforcement agencies have deployed their personnel across the state in accordance with the operational order, and the Nigerian Police Force, and as the lead agency in the election security, has assured all stakeholders of a comprehensive security arrangement before, during, and after the election. We urge all security and law enforcement agencies to remain highly professional, impartial, and diligent in discharging their primary responsibility of guaranteeing the safety and security of voters and election officials, including the media, accredited observers, and other stakeholders. Most importantly, they should adopt the use of aggressive intelligence-led operations to combat and mitigate the menace of vote trading.
Inclusive participation. The Eu-Sdgn Election Observation Hub is concerned that limited public attention has been given to measures to facilitate the participation of women and persons with disabilities in the election. In addition, there are little or no visible effort towards preventing and responding to election-related violence against them. The Hub is particularly worried about the vulnerability of women in rural and low-income communities to voter inducement through economic coercion and ability of PWDs to get to their polling unit due to restrictions of movement. Furthermore, deliberate measures are required to inform PWDs about the availability and use of assistive voting devices to enable them to vote independently. We therefore urge INEC, security agencies, political parties, civil society organizations, and relevant stakeholders to measure the full, safe, and unhindered participation of women and PWDs in the electoral process. Voter inducement, disinformation, and political intimidation. The menace of voter inducement remains a significant threat to credibility of elections. There are reports of the use of money, food items, and other materials to influence voters, and an organized vote buying scheme involving the use of pre-credited bank accounts for harvesting details of permanent voter card and national identification number in exchange for votes. Inirekudun, Ifelodun, Ikole, Ikere, Ekiti East, and Ekiti West local government areas, raising concerns about misuse of personal data for voter manipulation. In addition, there are reported cases of political intimidation involving the use of political talks and disruptions of campaign activities in Ado Ekiti, Kole, and Oye local government areas, which undermine voter confidence and public trust in the electoral process. Furthermore, there are reported cases of alleged police detention of political opponents without recourse to the judiciary through the use of Form K. The pre-election information environment is increasingly plagued by misinformation, disinformation, and inflammatory political communication, particularly across digital platforms such as Facebook, WhatsApp, TikTok, and X. These include the unverified claims circulating within the public space or plans by a political party to use cloned permanent voters cards in obtaining a predetermined number of votes, generating confusion and increasing political tension.
Independent National Electoral Commission, we expect timely distribution of sensitive election materials to all voting units across the state to ensure they open by 8 a.m. on election day. Ensure that all BVAS devices are properly configured, tested, charged, and safe with contingency arrangements to deal with any technical challenges on election day to avoid disruption during accreditation. 3, guarantee the seamless electronic transmission of validated polling unit results in real time as stipulated in the Electoral Act of 2026. Activate the INEC Situation Room and the Security and Alert Notification System, ISANS, to deal with any incident before, during, and after the election. Announce results in a transparent and timely manner at all levels, from polling units to the registration areas, local government areas, and the state collation centers. To the political parties and candidates, we expect you to respect the sanctity of the peace accord in its spirit and letter as a binding commitment towards a peaceful election by accepting the outcome of the election as declared by INEC and pursuing any grievances through lawful and judicial means rather than through protests, violence, or self-help. Secondly, refrain from vote buying, voter intimidation, and deployment of political thugs at all polling units and collation centers. To the security agencies, We expect you to maintain neutrality and professionalism at all times by protecting the electoral process and stakeholders. Avoid excessive militarization of the electoral process by deploying in a protective and not suppressive manner, which may intimidate or suppress voter participation. Respond rapidly and proportionately to any incidents of electoral violence, harassment, or disruption without partiality. To the media, please verify all information before publication to avoid reporting fake news, misinformation, and disinformation. Refrain from publishing or broadcasting results from unofficial sources or on social media until the officially declared results by INEC at the appropriate collation level. Adopt conflict-sensitive reporting on all aspects of the election to give the public a comprehensive and accurate picture of the electoral process and to douse tension. Promptly report any threats, denial of access to election sites, or restriction of movement to accredited journalists. Then to the voters, the electorates, please come out in large numbers.
You're welcome. My name is Olubolade Ko, and we are presently at a press conference organized by the EU-Sdgn. It's a press conference, and everything is boiled down on the election, that is the governorship election coming up in Ekiti State tomorrow, which is June the 20th, 2026. This is put up by the European Union SDGN, and today we've just been told about the stakeholders' readiness concerning tomorrow's election. And by tomorrow, again, by 1 o'clock, we are still going to come back again here to get updates about how things are going about on the election in Ekiti State. And on Girao TV, rest assured that we will be giving you details of the election as it unfolds. Today, we have various stakeholders from the INEC, security, people with disabilities, civil society organizations, YAGA, and so many of them are here today to give a report or to also let us know how far they have gone concerning this election. So everything is boiled down to making sure that the election